Hi everyone, it's Angela with Broadhead Memorial Public Library, back with another episode of Have You Heard? Today we are reading the second part of The Mouse and the Motorcycle by Beverly Cleary with pictures by Tracy Dockeray. We do want to take a quick minute and thank Harper Trophy Publishers for allowing us to share this book with you this summer. All right, if you are liking this video, go ahead and make sure you like it below, and you can also subscribe to our page to be alerted to when we post new videos. So yesterday when we left off, we had been introduced to a few people. Keith, who is a boy staying at the Mountain View Inn in room 215, his mom and dad, and then the main character of the book, Ralph the Mouse. So we had just left off, and Ralph had kind of fallen in love with Keith's toy motorcycle, and while Keith was out of the room, Ralph knocked it off of the nightstand, and he and the motorcycle fell into the trash can. So let's find out what happens next. The next chapter is called Keith. Ralph did not know how much time had passed before he was awakened by the lamp on the bedside table shining down on him. He squeezed himself into the tiniest possible ball, wrapped his tail around his body, and tried to make himself as thin as an apple core. "My motorcycle!" shouted the boy, the very first thing. "Somebody stole my motorcycle!" "Uh-oh," thought Ralph. "It won't be long now." "Nobody stole your motorcycle," answered the boy's mother from 216. "It's around someplace. You just mislaid it. You can find it in the morning. You had better get ready for bed now." "No, I didn't mislay it," insisted the boy. "I put it right here on the table beside my sports car." "You'll find it someplace," said his mother, not much interested. Boys were always losing things. While Ralph cowered behind the apple core, Keith opened the drawer of the bedside table and slammed it shut. He jerked back the bedspread, yanked the pillows off the bed, and threw them back. Then he got down on his hands and knees and looked under the bed and the table. Ralph wrapped his tail more tightly around his body. "Here it comes," he thought. The boy's face appeared in the opening of the top of the wastebasket. Ralph's heart raced like a motor. "Ha!" said the boy to himself. "Here it is. I wonder how it got there." His hand came down into the wastebasket to seize the motorcycle and lift it out. Still leaning over the wastebasket, he examined the bent handlebar and the chipped paint. "That's funny," he remarked aloud. "It must have rolled off, but I don't see how it could." The boy did the natural thing for a boy to do. He looked into the wastebasket again. Ralph closed his eyes tight and waited. He wished he had not eaten so much of the apple core. If he had not been so greedy, the core would have been thicker and he would have been thinner. "Hey!" whispered the boy, obviously very much surprised. "How'd you get in here?" He was careful to keep his voice lower than the sound of the breezes in the pines outside the window. Ralph did not move. He was grateful to the boy for not touching the apple core, even though it was really no protection at all. "Psst!" whispered the boy. "Are you asleep?" Still, Ralph remained motionless except for a slight quiver of his whiskers, which he was unable to control. The boy was silent, but the mouse could feel the rhythmic drafts of his breathing. The boy must be thinking, but what was he thinking? That was what was worrying Ralph. "No," said the boy to himself. "No, it couldn't be." "Couldn't be what?" wondered Ralph, who was beginning to feel cramped from crouching behind the apple core. "Hey, wake up," whispered the boy. That was the last thing Ralph wanted to do. "Come on," pleaded the boy. "I won't hurt you." Ralph considered. After all, what did he have to lose? If he stayed in the wastebasket, he was almost certain to get dumped into the incinerator. He might as well come out from behind the core. If he did, he might find some opportunity to escape. Cautiously, he moved his head from his paws and opened one eye. The boy was smiling down at him. Encouraged, Ralph opened the other eye and lifted his head. "That's the stuff," encouraged the boy. "Now come on, tell me, Did you or didn't you ride my motorcycle off the bedside table?" This took Ralph by surprise. He had not expected the boy to guess what happened. "Well, yes, I guess you might say that I did," confessed Ralph, rubbing his aching muscles. "I thought so." Neither the mouse nor the boy was the least bit surprised that each could understand the other. Two creatures who shared a love for motorcycles naturally spoke the same language. "That must have been some accident. Did it hurt much?" "Oh, some," answered Ralph, with a display of bravado. "Anyway, I didn't exactly ride it. I really coasted off. The telephone rang and startled me. Now how about getting me out of here?" "Just a minute," said the boy. "How did you get up here in the first place?" "Climbed, silly, on the telephone cord." Ralph instantly regretted his rudeness. He had better watch his tongue if he expected any help in escaping from the wastebasket. "Oh, of course," said the boy apologetically. I should have thought of that myself." At that moment there came a quick knock on the door to room 215 and the rattle of a key. "Help!" cried Ralph. "The maid! Don't let her see me!" Before the boy could do anything, the maid burst into the room. "Oh, excuse me." She seemed surprised to see a boy kneeling by the wastebasket. "I've come to turn down the bed." "Oh, that's all right," said the boy quickly. "I can do it myself. Thanks, anyway." "Thank you," said the maid, backing out of the room. Ralph knew she was not anxious to waste time turning down the bed. As soon as she finished her duty, she was going out to the parking lot to meet a busboy, a college boy whose job was clearing tables in the dining room. "Whew, that was close." The boy seemed every bit relieved as Ralph. "I'll say," agreed the mouse. "Keith," called his mother from 216, "are you getting ready for bed?" "Sort of," answered Keith. "You'd better come in our bathroom and take a bath," said his mother. "Aw, gee, Mom, do I gotta?" asked Keith. "Yes, you do," said his father. "And don't forget to brush your teeth," said his mother. "I won't," promised Keith. Then he whispered to Ralph, "You just lie low. I'll hurry and take a bath and get into bed and turn out the light. And after Mom comes and kisses me goodnight, we can talk some more." Lie low indeed. Ralph was indignant. He couldn't lie much lower if he wanted to, and he certainly did not want to sit around waiting to talk. He wanted to get out of the wastebasket. Once he was out, he would see about talking, but not before. Ralph could hear the boy splashing in 216's bathtub and then hastily brushing his teeth in 215's wash basin. After this, there were the sounds of a suitcase being opened and clothes being dropped on the floor. The boy hopped into bed, and to Ralph's relief, the light was turned out. In a moment, Mrs. Gridley came in to kiss her son goodnight. "Good night, Mom," said the boy, sounding as if he were really drowsy. "Good night, Keith," said his mother. "It looks as if we are going to have to stay here for a few days. Your father refuses to budge." "That's okay," muttered Keith, giving the impression that he was almost asleep. "Good boy," said his mother. "You're a good sport." "Good night, son," said the boy's father from the doorway between the two rooms. Keith did not answer. Instead, he breathed slowly and deeply and, as Ralph thought, a bit too noisily. There was no sense in overdoing things. As soon as all was quiet in the next room, the boy swung his legs out of the bed, fumbled around in his suitcase, and shone a flashlight into the wastebasket. Almost blinded by the unexpected light, Ralph held his paws over his eyes. "Hey, cut that out!" He could not remember to be polite. "Oh, sorry." The boy laid the flashlight on the bed, where its beam shone across the wastebasket rather than into it. "That's better," said Ralph. "Now, how about getting me out of here?" As an afterthought, he added, "Please?" The boy ignored the mouse's request. "How would you like to ride my motorcycle?" he asked. Ralph's heart skipped a beat like a motor missing on a cylinder. The mouse-sized motorcycle really would run after all? And there was one thing certain. Since the motorcycle really would run, the boy could not expect him to ride around the bottom of the wastebasket. "Sure!" Ralph tried to sound calm. The important thing was to get out of this prison. He braced himself, dreading the touch of the boy's hand on his fur. To Ralph's surprise, the boy did not reach in and grab him. Instead, he slowly and gently tipped the wastebasket on its side, permitting Ralph to walk to freedom with pride and dignity. "Thanks," said Ralph, genuinely grateful for this consideration. "I believe you're okay." "Sure I'm okay," said the boy, setting his motorcycle down beside Ralph. "Did you think I wasn't?" "You never can tell." Ralph put his paw on the handlebar of the motorcycle. "It's a real beauty, even with the bent handlebar. I'm sure sorry about that." "Aw, forget it," said the boy reassuringly. "It won't hurt much. The motorcycle will still run." Ralph threw his leg over the motorcycle and settled himself comfortably in the seat. "Perfect, just perfect." The boy was obviously delighted that his motorcycle was just right for a mouse. Ralph could not have agreed more heartily. It was perfect, except for one thing. He didn't know how to start it. "Well, go on," said the boy. "Ride it." Ralph was ashamed to confess his ignorance. "I don't know how to start it," he admitted. "It's the first motorcycle that I've ever had a chance to ride." "You have to make the noise," the boy explained matter-of-factly. "These cars don't go unless you make a noise." The answer was so obvious, Ralph was disgusted with himself for not knowing without asking. He grasped the handlebars, fearful lest his noise be too squeaky, managed a "vroom." Surely enough, the motorcycle moved, and really and truly moved across the threadbare carpet. Ralph was so excited that he promptly forgot to make the noise. The motorcycle stopped. Ralph started again. "Vroom." This time, he remembered to keep making the noise. He sped off into the square of moonlight on the carpet and found a good threadbare spot without any bumps. "Look out for your tail," said the boy. "Don't let it get caught in the spokes." "Thanks for reminding me," said Ralph, causing the motorcycle to stop. He started it again and steered it with one paw while he reached back with the other, caught up his tail, and held the tip safely in the handlebar. It was a glorious sensation, speeding around on the carpet, freely and noisily, and most of all, fast. Ralph discovered that if he made the noise fast, the motorcycle speeded up. If he slowed the sound, the motorcycle slowed down. He promptly sped up and raced all around in the rectangle of moonlight, where he made another discovery. When he ran out of breath, the momentum of the motorcycle carried him on until he could take another breath. "Gee, you're lucky," whispered the boy. In order to answer, Ralph had to stop. "I am?" It had never occurred to him that a mouse could be luckier than a boy. "You sure are," the boy spoke with feeling. "My mother would never let me ride a motorcycle. She would say I might break a leg or something silly like that." "Well, if you want to come right down to it," said Ralph, "I don't suppose my mother would be exactly crazy about the idea." He began to have an uneasy feeling that he really should be getting back to the mouse hole. "Anyway," said the boy gloomily, "it will be years and years before I'm old enough to ride a motorcycle, and then, when I'm old enough, my mother won't let me." Ralph really felt sorry for the boy, hampered as he was by his youth and his mother. "Go on, ride it some more," said the boy. "I like to watch." Vroom! Ralph started the motorcycle again and rode around in the moonlight. Once more, faster and faster, until he was dizzy from circling, dizzy with excitement, dizzy with joy of the speed. Never mind the danger, never mind what his mother thought. This was living. This was what he wanted to do. On and on and on. "Lucky," whispered the boy with envy in his voice. Ralph did not answer. He did not want to stop. All right, the next chapter is called Adventure in the Night. When Ralph had mastered riding the motorcycle on the threadbare carpet, he went bumping over the roses on the less worn parts of under the dresser and the bedside table. That was fun too. "Hey," whispered the boy, "come on out where I can see you." Brrrr! Ralph shot out into the moonlight, where he stopped, sitting jauntily on the motorcycle with one foot resting on the floor. "Say," he said, "how about letting me take her out in the hall? You know, just for a little spin to see how fast she'll go." "Promise you'll bring it back?" asked Keith. "Scout's honor," answered Ralph, who had picked up many expressions from children who had stayed in 215. "Okay, I'll tell you what," said Keith. "You can use it at night, and I'll use it in the daytime. I'll leave the door open an inch or so you can get in, and that way you can ride it up and down the hall at night." "Can I really?" This was more than Ralph had hoped for. "Where do you want me to park it when I come in?" he asked. "Someplace where the maid won't step on it," answered the boy. "That's easy. Under the bed. She practically never cleans under the bed." "Yeah, I know," agreed Keith. "I looked. There were a lot of dust mites back there." "Please," Ralph was pained. "Oh, sorry," said the boy. "That's what my mother calls bunches of dusty fluff under the bed." "My mother doesn't," said Ralph. "Now, how about opening the door?" The boy put his hand on the doorknob. "You won't let anything happen to my motorcycle, will you?" he asked. "You know I wouldn't let anything happen to a beauty like this," said Ralph. "See that you don't, and don't stay out too late." The boy opened the door and permitted Ralph to put out into the dim light of the hall. Ralph had a scary feeling he was on the threshold of adventure, where there were no beds or chairs for him to dart under in case of danger. The floor creaked. Someone was snoring in room 214 across the hall. Outside in the pines, an owl hooted, sending prickles up Ralph's spine. Ralph controlled the trembling of his paws while he hesitated outside the door to consider the possibilities of the hall, which was carpeted down the center, leaving two smooth highways of bare floor on either side of the baseboards. It didn't take long for Ralph to decide what to do. He picked up his tail, took a deep breath, bent low over the handlebars, flattened his ears, and sped down the straightaway as fast as the motorcycle would go. He could feel his whiskers swept back by the force of his speed. It was glorious. Ralph had never ventured so far from home before. The old wooden hotel, cooling in the night air, snapped and creaked, but Ralph was brave. He was riding a motorcycle. He passed room 213, ran out of breath, and let momentum carry him past another noisy snorer in room 211. On down the hall to the elevator, the mysterious elevator that carried people to that wonderful place Ralph had heard so much about, the ground floor. When Ralph came to the stairs, he stopped to look down, knowing it was impossible to ride a motorcycle downstairs, and at the same time wishing he could see for himself the wonders that lay below. He sniffed the air, and it seemed to him that he could smell the strange foods he had heard about: cinnamon buns with sticky frosting, turkey stuffing, and pancakes with maple syrup. A ray of moonlight from a window glinted on the glassy eye of a mounted deer's head over the stair landing and startled Ralph, sending him off down the hall, past the broom closet and the linen room to the end of the hall, where he executed a sharp turn and started back. Exhilarated by speed, Ralph raced up and down. Once, when he had heard some people getting out of the elevator, he had to duck behind the curtain of the window at the end of the hall. Toward midnight, he passed his Aunt Sissy, scurrying along the baseboard. He waved and nearly lost control of the motorcycle. Aunt Sissy stopped to stare while Ralph rode on, feeling pleased with himself, and at the same time sorry for Aunt Sissy, poor frightened thing, with only her feet to carry her from one crumb to the next. Up and down the hall raced Ralph until, after an especially noisy burst of speed outside room 211, he was startled to hear a dog bark inside the room. Now it was Ralph's turn to be frightened. "Uh-oh," he thought, "I better be careful." If there was one thing Ralph disliked, it was people who traveled with dogs. Dogs always sniffed around where they had no business sniffing. Once a dog had even barked into the mouse hole in room 215. It was days before Ralph's mother got over that. Ralph heard someone moving around inside room 211, and, looking back over his shoulder, he saw the door open and a tousled man in a bathrobe and slippers appear, carrying a little terrier. The man looked cross and sleepy as he started down the hall toward the elevator with his dog. He was walking straight towards Ralph. Realized that he was taking a chance, Ralph speeded up the motorcycle. If he turned to head back to room 215, he would have to pass the man. It was better to continue toward the elevator and hope that he could find a place to hide. He raced on down the hall. The wild barks of the little terrier told Ralph that he had been seen by the dog, if not by the man. "Be quiet," muttered the man to his dog. "I'm going to walk you. You don't have to wake up the whole hotel." Ralph reached the elevator, where he drove around behind the ashtray on a stand beside the door. He stopped and waited, tense and frightened. Outside, an owl was silent and hooted again. A sudden breeze rattled windows and banged a door. Ralph's teeth began to chatter. The dog whimpered, but the man walked straight past Ralph, pushed a button, and in a moment stepped onto the elevator. "Whew," thought Ralph. When the elevator door had closed on the sleepy man and his noisy dog, maybe he had better lie low for a while. In a few minutes the elevator returned to the second floor. As the man stepped out, the little dog looked over his shoulder and spied Ralph parked behind the ashtray stand. Because the dog was a captive and he was free, Ralph could not resist sticking out his tongue and wagging his paws in his ears, a gesture he had learned from children in room 215, and one he knew was sure to arouse anger. "Lemme at 'em," barked the little terrier. "Cut it out," grumbled the man, fumbling with the doorknob of room 211, while Ralph, a daredevil, now rode in a giddy circle around the ashtray stand. He had a feeling of cockiness he had never known before. Who said mice were timid? Ha! When the morning songs of birds in the pines grew louder than the snores of the guests, and dawn slipped through the window at the end of the hall, Ralph knew it was time to return to room 215. There he was shocked to discover the door shut. Only then did he recall the draft in the night and the slam of the door. He got off the motorcycle and pounded on the door with his fist. But what sleeping boy could hear a mouse beating on a door? Ralph knew from experience that he could flatten himself out and crawl under the door to room 215, but there was no way he could get the motorcycle through the crack, not even by laying it on its side and pushing. The handlebars were too wide. Ralph dismounted from the motorcycle, sat down, and leaned back again against the baseboard, prepared to guard the motorcycle until Keith awoke and discovered the door blown shut. He was tired after a night of such great excitement and full of dreams. Now that he had seen the hall, he could no longer be satisfied with room 215. It was not enough. He longed to see the rest of the world, the dining room and the kitchen and the storeroom and the garbage cans out back. He wanted to see the game room where he had been told grown-up people played games with cards and balls and paddles. He wanted to go outside and brave the owls to hunt for seeds. Ralph, a growing mouse who needed his rest, dozed off against the baseboard beside the motorcycle. After the experiences of this night, he would never be the same mouse again. The next thing Ralph knew, Matt, the bellboy, was standing over him. "Aren't you out pretty late?" Matt asked, causing Ralph to jump to his feet, even though he was not entirely awake. "You should have been in bed long ago. I suppose you were out till all hours, speeding around on that motorcycle." Ralph had seen Matt many times, but this was the first time the old man had spoken to him. He was astonished to discover they spoke the same language. Even so, Ralph stood in front of the motorcycle. Anyone who tried to take that away from him would have to fight Ralph first. "Nice little machine you got there," remarked Matt. "Kinda wish I was young enough to ride one myself. Must be fun speeding along, making all that noise." Ralph realized that Matt was a friend. "Say," he began to say, "how about helping a fellow out?" "Sure," agreed Matt. "What can I do for you?" "Open that door just a crack. Just enough so I can ride through. I promised the boy I would park his motorcycle under the bed." "Good place," said Matt. "The maid never cleans there if she can help it." Very quietly he turned the knob and opened the door just enough for Ralph to ride through. Ralph bumped up over the edge of the carpet, swung out around the wastebasket and the bedside table, and was about to drive under the bed when, "Eek!" screamed the boy's mother, who was standing in the doorway between 215 and 216 in her bathrobe, with her hair up on rollers. "A mouse!" Ralph put on a burst of speed and shot under the bed. "Where?" asked the boy's father, coming in from 216. "Under the bed." "I'll look, Mom," said the boy, jumping out of bed. Keith's face appeared under the lifted edge of the bedspread, where Ralph sat trembling on the motorcycle. The boy held out his hand and beckoned. Ralph understood. He dismounted and ran up the boy's arm inside the sleeve of his pajamas until he came to the crook of his elbow, where he waited, shivering, to see what would happen next. Down at the end of the sleeve he could see the boy's fingers close around the motorcycle. Then he himself felt what it was like to be lifted as the boy rose from his hands and knees. "It's just my motorcycle," Keith said. "Yes, that's it," agreed his mother. The door opened and the mouse rode in. The boy's father began to laugh. "Are you still dreaming?" "But I'm positive," insisted the boy's mother. "That you saw a mouse on a little red motorcycle?" finished the boy's father and laughed even harder. "You make it sound so ridiculous," objected the mother. "Well," the father snorted with laughter. "Well, perhaps I was dreaming," admitted the mother reluctantly, "but I know I saw a mouse. I'm positive, and I'm going to report it to the management. I knew the minute we moved into this spooky old place that it had mice." "Now I've done it," thought Ralph inside the pajama sleeve. All right, well, we are going to stop there for today. If you are participating in our summer reading program, go ahead and write 25 minutes of listening time down. We will be back next week with more of The Mouse and the Motorcycle. Have a great weekend. Bye.